Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Steve Shapiro of eHealth Ventures. Stephen, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Hal. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, great. Glad you could join us. And can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you did before you started investing in this sector?
Sure. So in the late 1960s, I started in the computer service industry while still studying accounting at American University. But I did go on to be a CPA. In the middle of the 1980s, I was in executive positions in the cellular phone business as a wireless carrier. We traded as Cellular One. First in Ohio, and we later sold our properties, and they're now Verizon. Then I moved to the Caribbean, built a cellular company just like we did in Ohio. We sold it, and now it's AT&T. So by the year 2000, I was part of fundraising, primarily high-yield debt, but more important, I had exits in excess of $1 billion. So I couldn't retire. So in the next 10 years, I did consulting, angel investing, and working on a startup in social media. Then I received a phone call from George Blumenthal, who I'd worked with in the past, and he asked me to join him in a startup focused on electronic health records. We were the first SaaS-based EHR with our primary focus on primary care physicians. Our IP was developed in Israel, so I had the opportunity to travel there often. I connected with a lot of smart people, learned about the Israel ecosystem. So I partnered with Talor Sax from Israel, and together we founded eHealth Ventures in 2014.
Great. So you're now focused on the digital health sector. So what led you to start focusing on that one for investing?
So in 2014, when Talor and I started, very few people knew the term digital health. The concept was just developing, but we had a vision on how digital health can be disruptive in the healthcare space. The Internet of Things, big data, and wearables were evolving. But when people thought of healthcare IT, it was more related to electronic health records, but it's so much more. So my entire career, I've been on the forefront of new technology. First, commercial computers in the late 1960s in the service bureau environment, think ADP. Then in the middle 80s in the cellular phones, later in social media. So by luck, stupidity, or awareness, I've seemed to be in the middle of transformational sectors. So digital health, why not?
So you focus on Israel. Why Israel?
So one would be in a vacuum if they didn't recognize what technology, innovation, and disruptive trends have come from Israel in the past decade. This country of only 8.7 million people has produced the Flex stent, which is a tube-shaped device used to open up arteries to prevent open heart surgery. The USB flash drive. In fact, the inventor, Dov Moran, is a friend and also a collaborator with eHealth Ventures. PillCam, the capsule, is the size and shape of a pill, and it contains a tiny camera to show the inside of the digestive system. Waze, which is GPS for cars, which was purchased by Google. Firewalls to prevent dangerous cyber activity, instant messaging, and recently WaterGen, which makes drinking water from air. These are just a few. And the Israeli technology innovation ecosystem is one of the most dense and active in the world today. It's hurled in R&D expenditures, number of innovative companies, and VC investments per capita. There are currently over 8,000 active high-tech companies, over 350 multinational companies with R&D centers in Israel. For example, in 1974, Intel has invested, since 1974, they've invested over $17 billion in its R&D hub, employing 12,000 people. With all these successes, one key driver is the government's support for entrepreneurship and innovation. One of their most aggressive programs for investment in creating innovation is their incubator program. eHealth Ventures became the 19th incubator under the umbrella of the Israel Innovation Authority. This gives us an 8-year license, which could be renewed based on our success. Our fund and incubator has $42 million under management. We're now starting our third year with 8 portfolio companies. Israel Innovation Authority, one of the big advantages is they put in non-equity money to our portfolio companies. This de-risks our LPs by allowing us to invest in 3 times more companies that our fund would otherwise allow. Our LPs also get much higher equity stake in each company because of this leverage.
So we have a lot of new investors that listen to the podcast. And so what's your advice to them about investing in the digital health or the healthcare sector itself?
Sure. Well, the first is not unique to digital health sector. Their solution must solve a problem. There are many great ideas. Some seem unique and disruptive, but I would advise to dig deep to understand if there really is a problem that is being solved or are they chasing a problem. According to CB Insights, not solving a big problem is the number one reason for failed startups. So the first is solving a problem. Next, in the healthcare sector, to understand the revenue and payment process. Unlike most sectors, the revenue and payment for healthcare is unique. It must be understood before making an investment. The best example I can give, when telehealth started, it failed. It was, in fact, solving a major problem, but the doctors were not reimbursed for the remote encounter. So it never took off in this country. Finally, 2 years ago, Medicare and insurance companies allowed a set of reimbursement codes for telehealth. So it's finally catching on. Third is understanding the regulatory process in healthcare, specifically HIPAA and FDA requirements. HIPAA requirements are for secure transfer of data and communications related to healthcare. It's very strict. The FDA is critical, and you must understand if it will be required. And to do this, you have to know how the technology would be used. And then once you know it, you have to build the cost and time frame in your business plan. That being said, the FDA is now recognizing that a transformation in healthcare is taking place, and they are modernizing to encourage innovation in digital health. To give a good example, one of our portfolio companies is DermaDetect. They're a digital health company with a vision of B2C self-diagnosis and clinical recommendations for skin rashes and lesions. This would require FDA approval. So we broke the commercialization into 2 steps. First, to sell to B2B. We're providing a solution for the dermatologist to gather information and use telehealth protocol to assist in the diagnosis. The IP will use AI and data analytics to suggest the diagnosis and solution to the doctor. However, the dermatologist will make the clinical decision. This way, we don't need FDA approval since the doctor's making the clinical decision. But we are gathering very important information to build on our AI and database. Then, when we finally get FDA approval, we have substantial clinical data behind the technology and hopefully get endorsements of the doctors. So my last advice, and probably the most important, and you've heard over and the entrepreneur and their team, the experience, the drive, the ability to execute are so critical, and also to look at how trainable they are. And I could go into this in more depth. If we have time, we can cover that later. So those are my suggestions.
Well, that's great. Good coverage there. And so the healthcare space is changing rapidly. How do you see the industry evolving today?
So one good read on how healthcare space is evolving is the annual J.P. Morgan Healthcare Conference that takes place every January in San Francisco. And 2 of the takeaways are, first, for healthcare providers, a major shift is taking place from a traditional strategy of buying and building hospitals to leveraging the existing platforms. Think of this as the difference between a product strategy and a platform strategy. A good example would be in the cell phones. The BlackBerry is a product, but iPhone is using it as a platform. So one's a product, the other's a platform. So face-to-face interaction with individual providers will be replaced using digital technology, as I discussed earlier, with telehealth and its ecosystem. For example, recently, now that there's reimbursement codes, Kaiser Permanente delivered 77 million virtual visits last year. In fact, many of eHealth Ventures' portfolio companies support this shift. The second takeaway from the conference is leveraging applied analytics. The lifeline for every health and healthcare hub will be actionable data. Applied analytics is becoming a new buzzword for big data, machine learning, AI, related to its importance in healthcare. Other areas that I would mention as our population becomes more comfortable with technology, the adoption rate is increasing for self-monitoring devices. Also, our population is becoming older, and the importance of providing health care where needed. When I was a child, probably before most of you were even born, the doctor would actually come to our house when needed. We're going back to this in a virtual way. The last point I'll make regarding the state of investing in healthcare is a well-needed paradigm shift. Traditionally, no one made money in the healthcare system unless someone was sick. So not enough emphasis was put on staying healthy. The shift to keep us healthy while lowering healthcare costs is creating enormous change and opportunity.
So where do you see it going? What's it going to look like in the future?
So I recently read a Robin Cook fiction book called Cell. This provided an interesting eye to the future. The smartphone replaces the doctor. It knows your health, meds, history, and through monitors, it knows your current state. Through big data and AI, it can potentially do a better job diagnosing what you have than your doctor and keeping you healthy. In fact, one of our Israeli partners, Maccabi Healthcare, they have collected data on their electronic health records for over 20 years to their 2 million plus members. They're testing a similar application, which I've seen. If you don't feel well, you describe what you are experiencing to your device. Through data mining of people similar to you with similar symptoms, the IP can suggest the problem and solution. And of course, connecting you through telehealth to the GP for further diagnosis and course of action is available.
Sounds quite fascinating. So for investors who are investing in this space, what should they keep in mind about it?
Well, the amount of money, as we all know, spent on healthcare does offer opportunities to do a better job and streamline the accepted protocols and workflow. However, the payment system in the U.S. offers challenges, as I discussed a little while ago. In the U.S., we also have a largely inefficient delivery system that is ripe for innovation, disruption, and consolidation. Several years ago, I attended, which I do every year, the Cleveland Clinic Innovation Summit. The Cleveland Clinic happens to be one of our partners. And Joe Biden spoke. And he spoke of his son, Bo, and the frustration he had dealing with the healthcare delivery system to treat his son's brain cancer. So he was with Bo at one doctor, but another doctor had the MRI results. So they were not able, since the two doctors are not in the same healthcare system, the doctor treating Bo was not able to access the MRI scan. So Jill, as we all know, Joe's wife, she had to go get the MRI results. She took the pictures from her smartphone of the MRI and sent them to Joe so Joe could show them to the doctor. Something has to be wrong here. So believe me, it's not the lack of technology that caused the nightmare, but healthcare policy, the lack of portability infrastructure. Will healthcare share information? I spent several years in the electronic health record space, and I saw the issues and complexity. Other countries, it works a lot smoother, certainly like Israel. They're a lot smaller and maybe a little more technologically advanced, but there is hope.
Well, there's certainly a lot of opportunity in the healthcare space. So what exactly is your investment thesis for it?
Well, as you see, we focus on digital health companies, but we will only invest in one that we can add significant value while leveraging the power and strategic connections of our multinational partnerships. And this includes the Cleveland Clinic, Amgen, SCI in China, and of course, Maccabi Healthcare in Israel and others. We strategically focus on digital therapeutics and digital diagnostics. The potential portfolio company, when we first talk to them, must be able to articulate the clinical problem the technology is solving with measurable benefits of quality and cost of care. We look for Israeli companies that offer high returns because of the innovative breakthrough technology, and we're trying to make sure that there's significant markets for their technology. It's very high risk, it's very early stage, but we try to minimize the risk by attaining critical opinions on the solution, and we have partners to do that. Also, to understand the revenue model and the geographic markets they serve. So we look for a solution with a broad geographic appeal. We probably wouldn't invest in someone with electronic health records because that's more localized to this country. But most important, as I said earlier, is the ability of the entrepreneur and their team to deliver, being coachable, and have the appropriate credentials. In fact, of our 8 portfolio companies, all of them are being led by second and third time entrepreneurs that have had successes and failures under their belt.
Well, it sounds very thorough. How did you come to that thesis? What led you there?
So we formed eHealth Ventures to be a significant part of the Israel technology ecosystem, focusing on early stage companies in what we see as underserved area digital health. One key element we required was to be accepted by the Israel Innovation Authority as an incubator. It took us 2 years from the start until we finally won, in a very competitive process, the grant to be an official incubator with all the associated benefits. The Innovation Authority establishes criteria of a portfolio company must meet. For example, the size of the investment, the time of the incubator, their R&D focus, etc. So part of our investment thesis, of course, is based on this. So second, we have world-class partners in healthcare. We leverage our partnerships, of course, to get input before we invest in a company.
Great. Do you have any examples of startups that fit that thesis?
Oh, goody. I was hoping you would ask that one. So we have 8 portfolio companies. I'll mention a couple. I mentioned Dermadetect. Another is Allergard. They bring a new concept for food allergen detection by using chemical sensing and machine learning technologies. The company is developing a personal allergen sensor that will enable the allergic person to scan his or her own food before consuming it, so they'll know if it's safe to eat. Another is Mind's Eye. With a focus on ADHD sufferers, they offer an objective attention index based on biomarkers. These biomarkers can be read on a device like a smartphone and be provided and measure the effectiveness of their drugs, if they're under or oversubscribed, helping parents and teachers. 2 more real fast. Train Pain. It's a novel digital treatment, non-invasive, aimed at retraining the brain network for long-term reductions of chronic pain. And the last I'll mention is TikTok, and they're using the latest advances in machine learning and artificial intelligence to provide the next generation of speech therapy. They're combining clinical research and voice processing technology into a gamification-based platform. This medical innovation presents a virtual assistant for speech and language pathologists.
Sounds good. Every sector has its challenges and risks. What are the challenges in this space?
Well, healthcare has always been slow to adapt. Just look at the stethoscope. It is so prevalent today. It was invented in France in 1860. This combines with the inoperability issues in healthcare and the regulatory process. Just remember the Joe Biden story. And also regulations vary from country to country in healthcare, so you must understand the markets that you're going after. You have to understand who you're selling to, the cost of acquisition. I must note that it is difficult to sell in this space and has caused many companies to go out of business. As a general rule, doctors are not good business people. They come up with new technology, but going to market is a new world for the doctors. For this reason, we, eHealth Ventures, have started an accelerator in Israel for innovative doctors to join. We do this on weekends and evenings, teaching them roadmap to commercialization. It also allows us to identify potential technology we may want to innovate. And this is done in partnership with Maccabi Healthcare.
So where do you see the immediate opportunities to pursue? What would you consider the low-hanging fruit?
So several times a year, we do a call for innovation. We ask our healthcare partners what is important to them. How do they see the future? And how can we help solve their needs that are not being satisfied? To understand opportunities, we must ask the questions to the right stakeholders. So we have worked hard to create this feedback on a regular basis. So areas to look at, I would say, are telehealth and related ecosystems, as we discussed. There's also a lot of buzz lately around blockchain technology and protection of information. In fact, many monitoring and diagnostic devices in healthcare really don't have the protection against cyber attacks. I think managing chronic diseases is a big area. Today, patients want to take control of their records and be more active in health management. So patient engagement is another great opportunity. So these are a few that I'd like to highlight.
That sounds great. So in the last few minutes that we have, what else should we cover that we haven't?
So as I mentioned, I was in the cell phone industry when it first started. Before cell phones, your phone number was a physical location. Today, we're accessible anywhere in the world. As I see the same transformation happening in healthcare. As stated earlier, the industry is moving to deliver healthcare, not only at a physical healthcare center, but when and where it's needed. The goals must be to reduce costs to healthcare, improve patient outcomes, and quality of treatment. We must emphasize more on keeping us healthy and to provide healthcare when and where needed.
Well, that's great. So how best for the listener to get back in touch with you?
So they can do it through my email, and they also can do it through my LinkedIn.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes so people can look that up and get back in touch with you. Appreciate your taking time and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thanks a lot, Hal. Appreciate it.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.